Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation as it's taking place. Also, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And in the case of YouTube and Facebook, make sure you hit that notification button. That way you'll get notified as soon as we go live. Also, please take a moment and visit fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. It is the place to go to find all of your Pro 2A swag. I'm talking t-shirts, tank tops, coffee mugs, hoodies, stuff for the home, stuff for the office. You name it, it's all right there at fpcgear.com. And the best part about it is every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for a right to keep and bear arms, so you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right, we all know that gun grabbers are forever trying to find a way to disarm law-abiding citizens. Well, now there's an effort being led by Senator Markey out of Massachusetts to disarm law enforcement. But not to disarm them in the way in which you and I are thinking, which is, taking away their, let me clarify. They probably, if they could, would try to take away their firearms. We all know that they're trying to, quote unquote, demilitarize law enforcement. They're trying to take away things like the tanks and the riot gear, but they're also trying to take away their ability to utilize non-lethal methods to address crowds, in particular to address riots and protesters. What really kind of set this off was the riots that took place in Portland, where the mayor of Portland wound up getting tear gassed by his own cops, which, by the way, my opinion, was hysterical. But he wound up getting tear gassed, and that led Senator Markey to introduce a piece of legislation banning the use of these non-lethal methods of addressing or dealing with crowds. Here's just a few of the statements that Mr. Markey had to say. Our streets are not meant to be battlefields, and law enforcement shouldn't be using weapons of war against our protesters and other Americans. Now, first of all, let us be clear. Rioters and looters are not protesters. Once you get to the point where you are rioting and looting, once you get to the point where law enforcement is there trying to keep you from setting buildings on fire, you are no longer a protester. So, I think we kind of get that. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that little point. Okay, he said law enforcement's use of tear gas also compounds the effects of structural racism because we know communities of color are already suffering disproportionately during the global respiratory pandemic. All right, so there you saw, he just made it a point. He said, I am going to now include basically a progressive word salad, and I'm going to throw every single issue. Let's see, we're gonna throw racism in there. We're gonna throw the global pandemic in there. We're gonna throw in structural racism. Can't forget the structural racism, and we're gonna show how use of tear gas against all people is in fact racist, and causes problems during the pandemic, because the pandemic is racist too. So we're going to throw all of that in there, because we can. All right, but don't worry, there's more. It's time to stop using these potentially lethal weapons against our own people. And that, I think, is the fundamental thing that really kind of comes to this, is it's not so much that they are lethal. It's that they are, quote unquote, potentially lethal. Well, anything out there. Cars are potentially lethal. Plastic bags are potentially lethal. The thing is that what they don't want use of force used against people who are breaking the law. And they want to basically disarm law enforcement. And I know in the end, what they really, I think, hope for is a different way of potentially dealing with or addressing situations like this. Something that was kind of outlined in a video by The Economist. Something that they believe will, in fact, be effective in dealing with riots and rioters.
Are other solutions. Captain Ron Johnson quietened protesters in Ferguson, at least for a while, by appearing without riot gear and relying on dialogue rather than firepower. And Sweden has a special unit known as the Dialogue Police, who are unarmed and are trained to prevent street protests from turning violent in the first place. Sometimes a charm offensive can avert the need for more drastic approaches to crowd control.
Yes, the dialogue police. That I think is the direction that I think they want us to go, or want law enforcement to go. But folks, here's the thing, and I know some of you are thinking, well, look, hey, most of us aren't law enforcement, most of us aren't cops. What does this really have to do with us? And this is really just kind of a way to show you that, look, the goal of disarmament is not just about law-abiding citizens. They want to disarm law-abiding citizens, but guess what? They also want to disarm law enforcement. They want to get rid of non-lethal. They want to get rid of lethal. They want to get rid of means of the ability of individuals to be able to even protect themselves from the bottles and the rocks that are being thrown at law enforcement by these protesters. And I'm sorry, I should not call them protesters. These are rioters. These are, in many cases, are criminals. I'm not saying that there are not peaceful protests. There are peaceful protests. In fact, most of the protests are peaceful. But a huge number of these protests, a huge number, more than the mainstream media will ever admit, are in fact violent. And they want you to believe, well, that they're fiery, but they're mostly peaceful. Yeah, no. If protests devolve into property being burned, if it devolves into people throwing Molotov cocktails at law enforcement, then no, or at people, at anyone, period, then no, these are not peaceful protests. And individuals, look, when you wage war on the people, on society, you cannot be surprised when society fights back. And law enforcement, this is a message to those of you out there. Look, they're coming after you. We told you they're going to come after you. They're going to try and disarm you just like they're trying to disarm us. And we know that all the polls, all the statistics have showed that law enforcement, the rank and file law enforcement, you guys are with us. You believe in our fundamental right to keep and bear arms, but you need to make sure that you pass that message on up the food chain to the people who represent you in the legislatures, to the people who represent you in your unions, to the people who run many of your departments. Sadly, many of the people who run your departments, they don't believe in the fundamental right to keep and bear arms for law-abiding citizens. They say they do, but then they want to push and pass policies and support politicians who don't. So just so you know, they're not just coming after us. We know they're coming after you as well. You need to stand with us, and you need to make sure that those entities that represent you stand with us in supporting the fundamental right to keep and bear arms. Just saying. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and telling your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.